retour parmi nous, and welcome back. Our first set of concurrent sessions focuses on how COVID-19 has impacted various sectors and how we can work together to support recovery. The tourism industry is stronger together. Merci de nous joindre à nous pour cette séance de débriefage sectoriel. Nous sommes heureux de présenter cet ensemble de séances simultanées qui mettront l'accent sur les répercussions de la COVID-19 sur chaque secteur ainsi que sur la façon dont nous pouvons travailler ensemble pour soutenir la relance. We are very grateful to the Toronto Star for sponsoring these sector debriefs. Bonne séance, and I'll see you again at 12:45.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Daniel Robert Gooch, and I'm president of the Canadian Airports Council. It looks like we have some really good turnout here today, so very much looking forward to the discussion. The Canadian Airports Council has 54 airport operator members, including the busiest airports in the country, but also 46 small and regional airports. We are the National Advocacy Association for Canada's commercial airports. I'm joined today by CAC Vice Chair and President of the Fort McMurray International Airport, RJ Steenstra, and on the other side of the country, Deer Lake Regional Airport President and CEO, Tammy Priddle. If you have questions that you would like to ask during this session, please enter them into the chat box. My colleague Deborah is here to help us get through them. Before turning to our panelists for a candid exchange on the topic, first I want to say a few words about the impact of COVID-19 on our airport sector. If you are gathered with us today, you're probably in the tourism sector, and at least you have a particular interest in it. So I don't need to explain to you that the impact of COVID-19 has been absolutely devastating for travel and tourism. The good news is that this crisis has inspired Canada's aviation and tourism sectors to come together like never before through the Tourism Industry Association of Canada and coalitions of organizations with common concerns. Air was the very first sector to be brought down by COVID-19, with the impact being felt as early as January. And sadly, air will probably be one of the last sectors to come back. And we appreciate that the financial health of so many more parts of our visitor economy depend on getting that air sector back up and running and travelers flowing through our airports again, so they can start flowing through our communities and our tourism businesses again. Testing, COVID-19 testing, will be a big part of the solution, with testing trials underway at several airports, including Calgary, where we have the first trial that allows travelers to get out of the quarantine requirements once they receive a negative test, with quite a few restrictions there. A broader rollout on testing will take some time. And in the meantime, that is why you are hearing a loud call by airports and our partners for financial support for the air sector. Canada's airports and our partners in the sector were enjoying an unprecedented boom in air travel in the decade following the 2008 financial crisis, with about 6% growth in passenger traffic and even better growth in international travel through our airports. Airports do many things. They serve as conduits for air cargo, support movement of healthcare workers and patients. They take our resource sector workers back and forth between their homes and remote work sites, and they help governments manage national disasters like forest fires. But what pays the bills to support these essential roles are passengers. Passengers provide about 90% of the revenue that support an airport operation. People think of airports as being part of government, but most of the major airports in the country, including the two that are here with us today, are not operated by government, but rather by private businesses that manage, build, and maintain our airport assets on behalf of users and the community on a not-for-profit basis. With the exception of very small airports, Canada's airports typically operate without government subsidies. What makes it work are the passengers. The money from their plane tickets support air carrier routes that our communities rely on, which in turn provides landing fee revenues to airports. This is supplemented by revenue from passenger services, such as parking, shops, and restaurants, as well as airport improvement fees that airports use to build and maintain infrastructure and pay off the debt that airports incur to make those investments. And those passengers are now gone. After the introduction of COVID-19 related travel advice and restrictions in mid-March, passenger traffic completely dropped. On a national basis, it's down 91% from April through September, and on not much of an uptick in recent months. If you look at 2020 to 2019 and 2018, The numbers in for the first couple of months of the year we're tracking very closely to what we're used to. But that clearly changed in mid-March when passenger traffic completely dropped off the cliff. In September, passenger traffic was down 85%, with particularly poor performance in US transborder and overseas markets. We don't see this improving anytime soon, with traffic expected to be down 65% next year versus 2019. And remember, this is a sector that was growing at year over year up until this year. And so Canada's airports expect to lose $4.5 billion in revenue for 2020 and 2021. And they expect to take on an additional $2.8 billion over the same period in debt, just to cover cash flows and maintain operations to support these essential services I described there earlier. So with that, I'll turn to my two colleagues to walk us through what all this means at their airports. Let's start with Tammy in Deer Lake. Tammy, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your experience in Newfoundland.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm Tammy Priddle. I'm the president and CEO with Deer Lake Regional Airport Authority. And I started in this position in the middle of February after 26 years in the public sector, in particular in healthcare. So maybe I'm interestingly positioned to be able to respond to the pandemic and have certainly lots of experience with health crisis. Deer Lake Regional Airport Authority is located in Western Newfoundland, a gateway to some of the most beautiful places and fantastic experiences in the province, including being a gateway to 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, including Grossmore National Park, Lansa Meadows, and Red Bay. Visiting Grossmore National Park is one of the most popular attractions outside of our capital city of St. John's. And the majority of people who visit Newfoundland certainly say they have to come back because they haven't had time to see everything and experience everything that they wanted to. In 2019, Deer Lake Regional Airport Authority contributed to over 1,400 FTEs in our region, 300 million in direct, indirect, and induced revenue, and we contributed to over $1 million in GDP. Tourism in our province contributes to 1.1% of our GDP, and there are over 6,900 people employed in the industry. 72% of those who do visit us travel by air. There is truly something majestic about Newfoundland and Labrador, and people from here tend to have a strong need to come home every year. Visiting friends and relatives makes up a large portion of our travelers, as well as people who want to go from Newfoundland out west to our friends in Fort McMurray, Alberta, BC, and Ontario. July and August of 2020 were expected to be our busiest months of the summer in history. Rental car companies were experiencing higher than normal bookings. Tourism in our region was planning for a stellar season with growth in operators and tour offerings planned. March 2020, we were hit by the global pandemic, as many of us experienced. In April 2020, Air Canada and WestJet suspended their flights into Deer Lake, and people that were coming to the island, in particular our commuter workers from places like Fort McMurray, had to fly into St. John's and then start a over 600 kilometer commute from St. John's to get home to their families. The province introduced travel bans and blocked all non-essential travel into our province, and they required anyone who came into the province to isolate and quarantine for 14 days. Our passenger traffic reduced by 96%. Since that time, we have seen some return in air travel and passenger traffic. Certainly the Atlantic bubble was announced in July, did help us a little bit, but the bans continued in terms of non-essential travel and the 14-day quarantine. Our passenger traffic in 2019 was over 300,000. By the end of September, we've experienced a decrease of over 81%. We are projecting 2020 to have passenger volumes at a 1975 level. Our operating revenue is down by 1.6 million by the end of September. Our capital revenue is down by 1.7, and we're certainly about to move into some of the hardest months in the winter where our costs increase. COVID-19 has reduced airline capacity into Newfoundland from January to September by about 62%. Even though there was a lot of effort on staycation this year, it certainly didn't replace the revenue that we would normally generate through tourism. The financial losses are great for our region, and we certainly saw routes cut by Air Canada, WestJet cut in Atlantic Canada by 80%. Our current schedule is 52% of what it would have been last year in October. And we are certainly very vulnerable around further reductions in service and routes. It will definitely be 2025 before we return to pre-COVID-19 levels. We maintain a strong public service role in Deer Lake with medevacs, over 30 medevacs in a month that support our healthcare system. And we have a strong role in search and rescue. Lack of air service will certainly make our area of the country less attractive to live, work, and do business. And we have a strong reliance, obviously, on air travel. We are an island, and it will certainly impact our economy and quality of life. But even greater, I think it will impact all of the people that we like to welcome every year, and certainly our connections to family and friends. And when Newfoundland and Labradorians who are unable to live in our province want to return home and have time with Nan and Pop or walk the beaches and smell the salt air, when that doesn't happen, we will lose way more of who we are as a people.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Thank you. I come from your part of the world, and to think that passenger levels could be down to where they were the year after I was born is just absolutely astounding to me and very tragic. Next, let's hear from RJ in Fort McMurray. RJ, please introduce yourself and tell us how things are in Northern Alberta these days.
Great, thank you very much, Daniel, and welcome to everyone. Hello and good morning and afternoon for you all. My name is RJ Steenstra, and I'm the President and CEO of the Fort McMurray Airport Authority. The Fort McMurray Airport Authority is also referred to as YMM, is an independently owned and operated by the Fort McMurray Airport Authority. As Daniel mentioned, we are a private business. We are not a government entity. We provide business, leisure, and workforce air transportation to and from Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo, which is actually located next to Wood Buffalo National Park, the largest national park in Canada, and also one of the largest in the world. We also like to refer to Wood Buffalo as our big backyard, which is endlessly unexpected with so much to explore here in this region. Given our vast landscape and remote geography, of course, air transportation is a critical lifeline in and out of our region. Unlike most airports in Canada, YMM Airport is located on privately owned land and does not pay rent to the federal government. Although we are on privately owned land, we are honored to operate on Treaty 8 lands, the home of and traditional territory of the Cree and Dene, and the unceded territory of the Métis people. When people think of Wood Buffalo, of course, what comes to mind are the Athabasca oil sands, larger than life heavy hauler trucks, and remote wilderness. But what is less known is that Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo has a developing tourism economy with an abundance of natural wonder and outdoor adventure to explore, such as hunting, fishing, Northern Lights experiences, and the Athabasca sand dunes. Yes, you heard that right. We actually do have magnificent sand dunes in Northern Alberta. Wood Buffalo's population hails from around the globe and across Canada, with closely knit ties to Newfoundland, Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and of course, PEI. Historically, YMM Airport has played a vital role in opening Northern Alberta development, particularly for oil and gas, commercial and urban population development. The airport has always seen itself as a key catalyst for regional economic development. However, now with the pandemic, we see our role as being mission critical in supporting the region in economic recovery efforts. Which leads me to our discussion topic here today around COVID and YMM and the regional routes and impact that COVID has had on those routes. At the onset of the pandemic, we implemented public health guided precautionary measures to enhance our existing health and safety program. We also worked really diligently with our airline partners, our airport businesses to ensure we coordinated our response to create a healthy and safe passenger experience right from the beginning. A couple of months ago, YMM became the first airport in Canada to achieve, or one of the first airports to achieve a global health accreditation through Airports Council International World. Despite our best efforts, of course, to amplify our health and safety measures and retain customer confidence, our airport continues to experience a devastating 70% decline in our business. The loss in revenue has a direct impact on the bottom line, as we have significant infrastructure costs that remain fixed and cannot be scaled down in response to the decline in revenue. Our airport businesses are also struggling financially. Restaurants, car rentals, and retail businesses depend on our passenger traffic at YMM. It is really a domino effect, with passenger volumes impacting the viability of YMM Airport, our businesses, spin-off businesses, local jobs, contracts, and procurement opportunities, and of course, our ability to contribute to tourism here in the region. These financial losses will have an irreparable negative impact on the residents and businesses in the region of Wood Buffalo. Moreover, it will stall the development of Wood Buffalo's emerging tourism market, a strategic play to diversify our economy here in northern Alberta. When it comes to rebuilding customer confidence, that too remains an uphill battle. While we have worked extremely hard to enhance our health and safety protocols to meet global standards, unless there's a vaccine or the availability of rapid testing at all airports, including Canada's regional airports, it will be a battle that we will struggle with. In addition, we've also experienced challenges in our flight schedule reliability, as Deer Lake has and many airports across the country have. Airlines continue to modify their schedules to ensure that they remain viable, which results in ongoing flight schedule changes and at times cancellations. From the customer's experience, air travel has become a very difficult thing to navigate. It is safe to say the entire air travel experience has been flipped on its head, and we are seeing the results of that in our passenger traffic. Regional routes are critical to economic recovery and tourism development in Wood Buffalo. They ensure the inclusion of remote regions such as ours in Canada's economy, including our tourism economy. The aviation sector has been one of those, as Daniel's mentioned, the hardest hit industries. Yet when we talk about economic recovery, one thing that we believe is certain is our national and regional economies need their airports to rebound. Thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, RJ. And now we have not a lot of time, but we'll get into some questions. And if we don't get to your question, my apologies. A quick one at the outset that I'll just answer. There was a question about how many small airports there are in the country. There are actually a few hundred small airports with some sort of commercial service. We have 46 small airports amongst our 54 airport members, which is why we work a lot with other organizations that represent many of the other parts of the sector, including those smaller airports, like the regional aviation associations. Now we'll get into the lightning round. That's what I'm calling it now. Some quick questions for our panelists. Let me get this kicked off. You're both from parts of Canada that have looked at tourism as a source for economic diversification. Can you speak to this and how your regions of the province, both of which are away from the biggest population centers in your province, how are they faring in growing tourism prior to COVID-19, and how has it changed? Let's start with you, RJ.
Yeah, so for Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo, tourism is in the development stages, but we continue to see that grow, and we want to continue to see that grow. It's a really important pillar in our strategic goal, not only as an airport, but also as a community. And so we work very closely with the Fort McMurray, Wood Buffalo Economic Development and Tourism Group. And despite the pandemic, we really have kept our foot on the gas. We've tried to ensure that we stay focused on those goals and achieving those goals, regardless of what's happening, because there will be a recovery. It's just what's the length of that recovery going to take? And we want to be ready when that happens. We've got amazing tourism product up here, and we want to continue to see the market look at Fort McMurray as an option for wilderness adventure and Northern Lights viewing and travel in general. And so that's really a big part of that. We've also relaunched actually a place brand to, and you think, why would we do that as a community, as a region at this particular time? But again, it's so critical that we take advantage right now of awakening Canada and the world to Fort McMurray. And so we just decided we're not going to let our foot off the gas and keep moving forward with our goals and our tactics to attract tourism into this region.
Thanks, RJ. Tammy, the same question.
Yeah, sure. So as I said in my presentation, we are a gateway, I guess, to many of the most favored destinations of people coming into Newfoundland, Labrador with the 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. But besides that, there's a lot of experiential type of tours that people can participate in. The type of traveler that is coming to Newfoundland are usually on their bucket list. And so people are coming to learn, to experience our culture. And, you know, we have some of the most award-winning ads, and people really want to experience what they're seeing on TV. So there's been a lot of growth in the last number of years in our tourism industry and on the western part of the island. And certainly COVID has impacted that, as I said, because of the 14-day quarantine and non-essential travel. I think we're even further disadvantaged than what some of our colleagues would be in central and western Canada. And some of our tour operators were able to pivot and be flexible and, you know, make things available to people locally or in Atlantic Canada. But, you know, we are concerned moving into 2021. And if we're waiting on a vaccine before some of those travel restrictions will be lifted, things are going to be challenging for many operators for sure.
All right, thank you. I have a question from an old friend and colleague, also in Alberta. The aviation industry has already undertaken new health measures like improved ventilation on aircraft, masking requirements, stringent cleaning protocols. Studies show the relative safety of air travel. Can this be better promoted? Should it be better promoted? Let's start with you, Tammy.
Yeah, so I think there's been a lot of effort put into promoting what airports are doing, what airlines are doing. I think that right now, you know, people are concerned about travel, and I think we do need to put more effort into how consistently the experience could be the same regardless of where you're traveling. So right now, if you're traveling into Ontario versus traveling to Newfoundland, your experience as a traveler would be very different. So I think that we do need to see some consistent standardization around, you know, that approach to ensuring safety. And we certainly would look to our federal counterparts around that. And I also think that, you know, for us in Newfoundland in particular, again, not to dwell on the travel ban, but, you know, that certainly does create some challenges for us. So, you know, working with government around what it will take to see some of those changes happen, I think is going to be really important.
All right, thank you, Tammy. And RJ.
Yeah, I would just add, I echo absolutely Tammy's sentiments around that. We need consistency, and we need to continue to vocalize what it is that's happening on both the airline side and the airport side. I think a big part of that right now is the global effort around health accreditation, which dozens of Canadian airports are now participating in. And what's important about that is that when you look at that and see that accreditation on your inbound or your departure airport, and you see it on your inbound airport, then you know that they are meeting a global standard that's been set. And of course, health and safety is always part of our daily requirement and routine here at the airport. We've just now, with that, have enhanced it and ensured that the public understands what measures we've taken in the terminal and with all of our partners, airlines, concessions, car rentals, to ensure that it's as safe as possible an experience. And hopefully that will continue to build confidence with the traveling public to get back on airplanes and at least move around the country domestically and in the future across border and international.
All right, thank you, RJ. Shifting gears a little bit to, we have a question on financial relief for the sector. I'll go back to you, start with you, Tammy. What are you seeing other countries, other jurisdictions doing to support their air sector, to support airlines and airports? And what does Canada have to learn? What should Canada be learning from what is going on in other countries?
Thanks, Daniel. Well, you know, we did certainly see just south of the border very quickly after the pandemic, you know, started to impact the sector, that there was support provided. And, you know, in Canada, we've been almost 8 months or almost 9 months now into this. And unfortunately, although, you know, we are certainly hearing that there's things that are coming to support us, we haven't received that yet. So we are struggling, and obviously every airport is different. We have different models, we have different situations, but you know, definitely I think of all the industrialized nations, Canada is one of the slowest to come and provide some support, other than things that were generally provided to all businesses, like the Canada Wage Subsidy. And of course, there was the offer of rent relief, but that certainly didn't help an airport like Deer Lake, because we don't, you know, we own our own land. So yeah, so there are things I think that have been done, but certainly is not enough for us to get out of the situation. And we certainly aren't going to be able to get out of the situation on our own by just reducing expenses when we have such a loss of revenue.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. RJ, do you have anything to add on that?
No, well, no, not really. I mean, obviously, the U.S. is a big example of how they came in very quickly to provide some fundamental support to airports in their country, and that's created stability in their aviation system right off the start. And so it's so critically important. We've continued to manage, as it were, through 8-9 months now of you know, between 70 and 95% reduction in passenger. We are a user pay model, and unfortunately, when we don't have any users, there's very little revenue. And so that's created such incredible strains on us. And it also impacts our ability to make future decisions. And that's the biggest challenge that we have is how do we create stability and then enable future decisions for next year alone, in terms of how we continue to keep our airports viable, and the businesses that completely rely on this airport for their livelihood and their employment. How do we keep them all moving forward? And as Tammy's mentioned, the wage subsidy program we've taken full advantage of, and it's been fantastic from that standpoint, but it's just not enough, certainly on the regional airport side.
All right, thank you, RJ. I see we have maybe just a little over a minute left before we need to wrap up. So lightning round. What are the top 3 things the government could do to help the sector now? Start with you, Tammy.
So the top 3 things that could help Deer Lake would be financial support, obviously, in terms of operating grants. And the second thing for us, specific to Newfoundland, would be to look at using testing on arrival in order for us to reduce the 14-day quarantine. And the third thing I think would be to implement standardization around you know, safety procedures across the country.
All right, thank you, RJ. Top 3.
I would agree completely with what Tammy's just outlined. It's really around a consistent testing protocol, taking advantage of our long history with safety and health, which airports have, and using those skills and knowledge to move forward. And then, of course, is finding a way to support the sector so that we can get regional tourism back up and running, which is so critical to all our economies across the country. We are a system, and we need to act like a system that fully supports each other. So those would be sort of the 3 key areas for us here in Fort McMurray and for regional airports across the country.
Well, thank you. And that's a great point to wrap this up with. Let's get regional tourism back up and running. To do that, you have to get our airports running. You have to get our airlines strengthened and financially viable. It's not just one part of the sector, it's the whole thing. And if we can get our air sector stabilized, then you know, we can help support recovery in tourism to Canada, not just in the major cities, which is of course very important, but also in our regional centers as well. So I want to thank my 2 panelists, Tammy and RJ, for joining us today. I want to thank all 220 of you who've signed in to listen to us today. I think we had a pretty thorough discussion in a very short period of time. And I know if you're like me, you're looking forward to the rest of the sessions from this conference. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Merci de votre participation. Le congrès touristique virtuel de l'AITC de cette année est financé par le Fonds pour les expériences canadiennes en partenariat avec le gouvernement du Canada. Thank you for joining us. This year's virtual TIAC Tourism Congress is funded through the Canadian Experiences Fund in partnership with the Government of Canada.